Good morning. I'd like to call this Municipal Planning Commission meeting to order for March 12th, 2024. Municipal Planning Commission is conducting this meeting in person and via conference call in accordance with Municipal Government Act Section 199. Council chambers is now open for public attendance in person. However, members may still join meetings remotely using our current teleconference process. As per Wheatland County Policy 7.13, members of the public are not permitted to speak unless the commission agrees to hear from them. If the commission agrees to allow the public to speak, the chair will call upon specific individuals at that time. Please note, this call is being recorded and will be uploaded to our website and or social media. For any individuals using the conference call line, we ask that you mute your phone to eliminate background noise. Everyone has a right to be present at Municipal Planning Commission meetings. Any attendees that are considered disruptive to the progression of this meeting may be removed at the discretion of the chair as per Municipal Government Act Section 198. We thank you for your cooperation and understanding. As I understand it, Member Kester will be unable to attend this meeting, so we'll be, all the members are in person. We have an agenda in front of us. Are there any additions or deletions? Yes.
No additions, but I can move the agenda as presented.
Fantastic. I'll call the vote. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you. We have the unapproved minutes of February 13th, 2024. MPC's wishes.
I'll move the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Member Laprise. Any discussion on that? See now, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is passed. We are now on to development permit applications. The first one is DP 2022-002. Thank you.
Good morning. I am Suzanne Hayes, Development Officer with Wheatland County. I will be presenting the first 4 files today. The first file is for an extension for a solar facility for DP 2022-002. The location is on agenda package page 10. And it is located approximately 5.6 kilometers north of Gleason, 3.2 kilometers east of Highway 1 on the west side of Range Road 255. We didn't circulate this request for an extension. Agenda package. The request is for a time extension for the development permit, which became effective on March 30th, 2022, with a completion deadline of March 30th, 2024, according to the land use bylaw requirements. This request is to extend the completion deadline until September 30th, 2025, which would allow an additional 18 months to complete construction. The proposal was for a 13.3 megawatt solar facility covering 72 acres of the 160 acre parcel. The original AUC permit was granted in 2021, and the project is still permitted under the AUC to construct, connect, and operate the facility. The applicant had been working to satisfy the development permit conditions and had completed several pre-construction on-site activities. The grid interconnection is under construction, and all interconnection construction costs have been paid to Fortis, Altalink, and the Alberta Electric Systems operator. These activities were being completed in parallel with a funding application to the federal government, which required partnership with an Indigenous partner. In February of 2023, the Indigenous partner, which the applicant had originally negotiated with and which had been accepted by the federal government, opted not to proceed with the partnership. So the applicant had to obtain an alternate Indigenous partner, and it needed to be federally approved, which caused significant delays in the project completion. So the land use bylaw stipulates that if a permit is not completed within 24 months or carried out with reasonable diligence, the permit ceases. and the permit is expired unless an extension to the time period has been granted by the Development Authority. The master schedule of fees stipulates that a development extension may be granted one time only. This is the first extension request for this project, and the proponent is confident that the project can be completed by September 2025 deadline. On page 8 is staff's recommendation, which is that Municipal Planning Commission extend the development permit completion deadline to September 30th, 2025. And the standard 3 response options are located on the same page. Please let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. MPC's wishes? Yes, Member LaPriest.
I'll move that Municipal Planning Commission extend the development permit completion deadline for application DP 2022-002 to September 30th, 2025.
Thank you. Discussion? Yes, Member Larson.
Is administration confident that they've done their due diligence? I mean, they've had 2 years to do this. I get an apart enough.
I am confident that they have been working because they've been in contact with us consistently on their development permit conditions and making sure that all the conditions have been met and getting their landscaping security. They're getting ready to pay that. But other than that, they have been in contact with us about all the other conditions and trying to get them all met. So in my opinion, I think they have been trying to get this started.
Thank you. Any more discussion? I just got a question, just an education question for myself. If the commission were to turn this down and say no, there is an appeal platform available to the applicant, that because we'd have to have justifiable reasons to turn this down, would there not be?
I don't believe there's an appeal for an extension. That's an internal policy, so there's no appeal for an extension. I believe what would happen is the permit would become void. They would have to start again and apply again.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Well, I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is passed. We will move on to 2.2 DP 2023-121.
On this application, this report begins on page 12. It is for a stockpile, and the location plan is on page 22 of the application package. It is located approximately 9.6 kilometers northwest of Ardenode, 0.8 kilometers east of the boundary of Rocky View County, immediately southwest of the intersection of Range Road 255 and Township Road 262. The circulation map is on the same page. We circulated to a 2-mile radius. We did receive 1 response with concerns, and a response to the concerns was provided by the applicant. Would MPC like these read?
MPC's wishes. Has everybody read they were all emailed to us in the last couple of days, so.
Just a question was the people that are listening in, they wouldn't have no opportunity to see this or hear this, correct?
You're right.
And I'd like it read.
Okay. That's probably wise. I hadn't thought about the people listening in, so.
Will we read the response as well? Okay.
I would think, to be fair, absolutely, yes.
Okay. To whom it may concern, we are Dave and Judy Collier and, sorry?
Is it possible for you to put that on the screen?
Oh, sure. Come and help me, someone. Oh, there they are.
Okay.
Okay, we're good. Okay. We are Dave and Judy Collier, and 1 mile from the proposed permanent biosolid stockpile site. In the past 15 years, we have dealt with the Willow Tree Farm issues, such as stench from stockpiles and roads tore up due to heavy truck traffic. Biosolid stockpiling has been going on around us without permits and has remained there over the winter as well. Now they are going to follow the land use bylaws. Is this because they got caught? These stockpiles have given us concerns regarding our air quality. When we contacted Silvis about the stench from the wet stockpiles, they admitted they never checked them in wet weather. Silvis did say they could put a sealer on the piles, but don't always have the product. How safe is the area water supply? Berms don't do anything to stop human waste contaminants leaching into the ground. Repeat leaching applications will no doubt affect underground water supplies. We have no trust with the City of Calgary or Silvis, and therefore all testing should be done by an independent company not affiliated with them. Soil testing needs to be done before stockpiling spread. Water wells in the area also need to be tested yearly at the applicant's cost. Who is liable for contaminated wells? Safety of our land and water is of the utmost importance to everyone, and every precaution should be taken to protect it. If this is so safe, why doesn't the City of Calgary put it in their backyard? We are sure they have plenty of marginal lands to put this on. In closing, we strongly oppose this application for biosolid stockpile in our backyard. You're going to read it? Thank you.
Good morning, Stephen Kuntz from administration here, reading the response from Silvis. So regarding stockpiling without permits, the temporary stockpile locations are intermittently used and are dependent on where the biosolid locations are taking place for that operational season. The all-weather stockpile is the only stockpile that we utilize each year. The Alberta Environment and Protected Areas guidelines for the application of municipal wastewater sludges to agricultural lands do not have stockpiling requirements, but we follow the best management practices for stockpiling. Regarding stockpiling without permits, Wheatland County was engaged in 2013 when the stockpile was originally developed, and the county indicated that it did not have any requirements at that time. The current development permit process is not due to Silvis operating without proper permits, but rather due to Wheatland County bylaw changes that occurred in 2017. As a part of our annual reporting, we report the date all biosolid applications are completed for that operational season. Applications are typically completed at the end of November. Biosolids have never been stored in the stockpiles, temporary or all weather, throughout the winter through the lifespan of the project. Regarding air quality, our operation does not generate any combustion gases or any chemical processes that could affect air quality. Potential for odor was considered, and the city and Silvis proactively started using odor control product that was expected to reduce odor emissions from the stockpile. Although reactions caused by odors may be perceived as unpleasant by individuals, symptoms are not necessarily associated with a human health risk. Silvis and the City of Calgary take concerns seriously and work to be transparent about project activities by fully addressing queries raised. The query was raised in May 2023 regarding odors from the stockpile. As part of addressing this concern, the city contracted a third-party consultant to conduct an odor investigation to determine the possible odor impact of the biosolids on the surrounding areas. The results of the odor assessment determined that the AWS contributes minimally to odor concerns within the study area, which is a 10 by 10 kilometer area centered around the all-weather stockpile. The odor assessment indicated that the best sealer for the biosolid stockpile is the natural crust that forms shortly after delivery, and concluded that the odor control product being proactively used was not beneficial. While not included in the investigation, temporary stockpiles are expected to have similar minimal odor profiles. Regarding water supply, biosolids applications are regulated by AEPA. With regards to the stockpile that is subject to the development permit application, a poly liner, which was not required by regulatory bodies, was installed in 2013 during stockpile development to address the concerns about ground and surface water protection. Stockpile site is also well compacted, minimizing the potential for infiltration. Repeated applications to receiving area are restricted to once every 3 growing seasons to mitigate the potential for excess nutrient loading, and additional applications are limited to background soil nitrate levels. From 2013 to 2017, for phase 1 of the project, Silvis conducted a voluntary groundwater well testing initiative in the area for neighbors. Results of the well monitoring program can be made available upon request. The results of the program did not demonstrate any impact to groundwater resources attributable to the biosolids management conducted in accordance with best management practices and the AEPA guidelines. Therefore, the voluntary well monitoring program was concluded in 2017 after 5 years of monitoring. Silvis does not hire an independent company to test wells. If an individual is interested in testing their well, they can contact the local community health center, public health unit, for sample bottles and find information on how to collect a water sample. They provide a list of the health units at myhealth.alberta.ca. Water well logs for the area identify the source of drinking water wells as confined aquifers with depths generally over 100 feet below the ground surface. A confined aquifer is an underground layer of water-bearing material lying beneath other layers of impermeable materials. For the project area, that layer of impermeable material is generally over 50 feet of clay, which helps protect the water quality in the confined aquifer from potential land use impacts. There are several septic fields between the project sites and water wells, and other impacts that could have potential impacts, such as fertilizers and manures. It would be difficult to test water wells in the area and determine the exact source should any parameters of concern be identified. In 2024, the city and Silvis are hiring an independent hydrogeological consultant to complete studies of the project area to determine groundwater patterns and if water well monitoring is recommended considering the information above. Regarding soil testing, registered qualified professionals at Silvis, such as agrologists who adhere to their professional organization's code of ethics, conduct pre and post application soil sampling of biosolids applications areas in accordance with the AEPA guidelines. Temporary stockpiles in agricultural fields are part of the application area. Samples are sent to an independent third-party laboratory for qualitative analysis. Silvis has 30 years of experience throughout Western Canada managing residuals and are trusted professionals in this field.
Thank you.
Welcome. We did circulate to agencies. Rocky View County had a response. They requested a condition that the applicant be required to contact Rocky View County to determine if any permits or road use agreements are required for the importation of biosolids from the Shepherd Lagoon to the stockpile locations and distribution of biosolids from the stockpiles to the application sites. This has been added as a condition. AEPA was circulated. They didn't provide a response. Internally, the manager of operations said that the applicant will be required to enter into an access and work agreement and a road use agreement with the county annually to facilitate intensive hauling upon county roadways. Dust control will be required along the haul route, and the applicant will be responsible for any damages to the roadway resulting from their hauling activities, as stipulated within the road use agreement. This has also been added as a condition. Our Agriculture and Environment Department said make sure that the berms and liners are in good condition. Pages 23 and 24, we can see the site plan and an aerial photo of the stockpile. So the application is for a biosolids all-weather stockpile, a component of the Willow Biomass and Marginal Lands pilot project. Stockpile is located on a 160-acre parcel, which is leased from a Hutterite colony, who also owns all the lands adjacent to the subject parcel on all sides. And the site is surrounded by numerous rows of willow trees, which are part of the willow tree plantation. In 2013, in consultation with AEPA, the City of Calgary initiated a project that involved using the dewatered biosolids as a fertilizer source to improve the quality of soils considered marginal for agriculture. The project is managed by Silvis, a company specializing in developing and implementing sustainable residuals use by recycling nutrients and organic matter to build healthy soils. Activities associated with the yearly operational season are the hauling of biosolids from the Shepherd Lagoons, which are dewatered in the Bonnybrook wastewater treatment plant located in the City of Calgary. The application to the Willow Plantation, which exceeds 300 hectares in size. The application to other colony lands identified annually, currently exceeding 1,900 hectares, and application to off-site lands identified by the landowners and through an application process. The biosolid stockpile is used intermittently to temporarily store biosolid deliveries during each year's operational season when weather conditions do not permit field access to temporary field stockpiles. Biosolid stockpiling typically occurs from May 1st to July 31st. All stockpile material is applied each year and no biosolid stockpile remain over the winter. The AEPA approval has been granted until December 31st, 2028, allowing for hauling dewatered biosolids from the Shepherd Lagoons to the project location and stockpiling the material as required for the project. The AEPA authorized stockpile is 1 hectare. It allows for up to 4,000 bulk tons of biosolids, with the actual volume being considerably less. Biosolids delivered to the stockpile for ag usage are authorized by AEPA and are managed in alignment with provincial legislation and industry best management practices. On page 26, we have a diagram of the haul route taken from the TIA. Excuse me. So typically 6 to 14 loads of biosolid materials are being delivered daily to the site during the stockpiling period, which is May 1st to July 31st. The applicant currently obtains an annual road use agreement to facilitate the intensive hauling. If approved, it will be a condition that the road use agreement and access and work agreement be entered into annually. A TIA was completed which did not identify any major concerns regarding impacts to traffic along the haul route, and no geometric improvements to intersections or segments along the haul route were recommended. The AWS, all-weather stockpile location, is depicted with a star, and there are 3 plantation locations colored in gold. The northernmost one is in Rocky View County. The recommendation for Silvis included continual monitoring and maintenance of the gravel roadway and to avoid hauling under wet road conditions. Continue the application of calcium to the road prior to hauling season to prevent dust, and seasonal monitoring and reapplication of calcium or watering to keep the dust low. These recommendations are covered by the road use agreement, which has been added as a condition. Page 28 shows the access to the site from Township Road 262. And it must have been taken in winter, this photo, but there's no leaves on the trees, but these are all willows. An odor assessment was completed of the all-weather stockpile by Pickup Air Quality Science Consulting in 2023, which was reviewed by McElhaney on behalf of Wheatland County. 3 locations of the stockpile area were sampled, and the samples were sent to an accredited odor laboratory, St. Croix Sensory, Inc., for analysis within 30 hours of sample retention. So page 27, we just see some of the odor sampling equipment that was used. Recommendations were provided by McElhaney related to the cover of the pile, containment of trucks bringing in biosolids, adjustments to mixing biosolids with willow fiber, and changes to the shipyard lagoon if biosolids are added. Silvis provided a response to each recommendation, and a final review of the responses was provided by McElhaney. No further testing was recommended, and the report findings provide a concise understanding of the potential odors that may pass the property line. The recommendations and the responses are found in the agenda package on page 16. A drainage assessment was completed in 2013 when the project began, and it was recently reviewed by McElhaney Engineering in 2023. The review included the drainage assessment, liner specifications, and topographical details of the berm. Page 23 Includes an aerial photo of the all-weather stockpile location. And the stockpile was constructed to facilitate intermittent biosolid deliveries when access to the dry weather area was not possible. Site construction included stripping of the topsoil and construction of berms to contain runoff. The berm is 1 meter high with a level, excuse me, with a level top portion of approximately 2 meters and a base of approximately 4 meters. A poly liner was installed which separates the gravel base from the native soil to reduce risks associated with infiltration. Initially, the drainage was completed to address stakeholder concerns that runoff from the stockpile area was draining onto adjacent properties and into an agricultural swale. To build stakeholder confidence and provide evidence, Silvus gathered technical data to confirm that there was little or no possibility of biosolids movement as described. The data was provided in the drainage assessment. The application aligns with section 3.1.1 of the MDP as it encourages diversification, innovation, and the use of best practices within agricultural operations. Policy 3.1.2 states that the county shall consider the environment and the state of land in consideration of agricultural land use applications. Increasing the viability of marginal agricultural land aligns with this policy. The stockpile site is monitored and authorized by AEPA and operates according to industry best practices. The land use bylaw, in reviewing the land use bylaw, the willow tree plantation and marginal lands project falls under the definition of agricultural operation, as the definition includes the raising of trees and other crops and the application of fertilizers. The Ag General District lists stockpile as a discretionary use. The placement of the stockpile meets the prescribed setbacks in the LUB as it is located 68 meters from the right-of-way of Township Road 262. Staff note that if the stockpile itself were not approved, it would not preclude Silvus from applying biosolids to marginal agricultural lands or on the Willow Tree Project lands within Wheatland County. The spreading of the biosolids may produce odors which could still occur without stockpiling of the biosolid material. Issuance of the development permit allows staff to place conditions regarding road use and helps to facilitate a process for addressing complaints. With AEPA overseeing the environmental components and considering the review of the odor assessment, TIA, and drainage study, adequate assurance has been provided that the stockpile site is being operated and maintained in a suitable manner in alignment with best practices. Staff's recommendation is on page 14. Staff are recommending, no, not page 14. Oh, there we are, yes. Staff are recommending that MPC approve DP 2023-121 for a stockpile subject to the conditions as noted, which includes condition 1A, that the stockpile may only be used from May 1st to July 31st each calendar year. Condition 7, that the applicant enter an access and work agreement and a road use agreement. And condition 8, that the applicant contact Rocky View County to determine if RUAs are required prior to hauling. Condition 9, that the applicant shall reference the City of Calgary phone number on all project signage and neighbor notification letters. Also, that the applicant shall provide documentation to the county verifying the action taken to remediate a complaint. And page 21 has MPC standard 3 options to consider. Page 20. Please let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. MPC's wishes? Yes, Member Clausen.
I have a few questions. I'll start with, I'm going to try to stick to just the stockpile. Pardon me. the stockpile part, because that is what we're basically approving right now, or trying to regulate. The one question that stands out in my mind right off the get-go is how will there still be offsite stockpiles? Or will that be condition number 6, will that regulate that?
So by off-site stockpiles, are you talking about where they are spreading the biosolids?
No.
Okay,
So previous year, I witnessed and went to complaints where they were stockpiling on a field that was not in the all-weather stockpile location. So they were hauling direct to fields to be applied at a later date in the same year. So will that still be?
yes, that will still be occurring because those are just temporary while they're spreading on a particular location, and they change every year. There's nothing that's consistently every year going back to that same stockpile. So we didn't consider those as a stockpile.
I will disagree. It is a stockpile, unless there's a amount of tonnage that would regulate what a stockpile is. So there's 2 different standards here. It's the same material being hauled. In one location, there's a liner, there's a clay, and it's all set up. It's actually has sheltered. You can't see it from the road. It has a bigger access. It was designed for this from the start. What I had witnessed myself and what the residents were complaining about was the majority was there was stockpiles very similar to what a feedlot would do and haul out and then spread it at a later date. It's all within a very small area, say a 5-mile radius. So that's where the majority of the complaints that I dealt with last year came from. So I see this doesn't help that. So to me, if there's, what is the definition of a stockpile then, I guess?
So that will be in this report. Stockpile means an accumulation of goods, materials, or raw materials stored outdoors in pile-like formation.
Okay, then we've missed something here. We should, in my understanding, then we're approving one site right now. If there's any other future sites, they have to come back and be approved.
The AP. Right. Okay. So Stefan is referring to the section on the AEPA authorization. It says that it allows for hauling dewatered biosolids from the Shepherd Lagoons in Calgary to the project location and stockpiling the material as required for the project. It authorizes the 1 hectare stockpile site with the actual volume being considerably less. Biosolids delivered to the stockpile for agricultural usage are authorized by AEPA and are managed in alignment with provincial legislation and industry best practices. So each of these stockpiles where they're spreading, these temporary ones, are managed by AEPA and their approval.
Chair, can I follow up?
Yes, please. Go
So
ahead. I'm just reading.
my understand, okay, so on one hand, we can regulate a stockpile, and the other hand, we can't. So what's the, I understand the AEPA has oversight, but how can we take that oversight away from one site and not another? And one site is clay lined, and is set up for, like, it's a double standard that doesn't make sense to me. And it's the same product, it's not staying any more than a year. It's just being applied, it's being stockpiled in a different site. So I don't understand the difference.
From staff's perspective, we didn't consider these ones that are just, we're stockpiling here while we spread on this site as permanent stockpiles. Because they change every year, it might not be there again for another 4 years later. And that was our opinion why it's not a permanent stockpile site.
Okay, that is the biggest concern I heard from neighbors this last summer. I witnessed one where there's a stockpile being actively filled right across from a homeowner that had no notice. And I would hope that we would be able to give them some comfort level, but this isn't changing anything. It's approving an all-weather site that stores the same amount of material for the same time, and there's still off-site ones. I would hope that we'd be able to have permits for each application site. I don't know if that's available or not, but. Oh,
Um, Member Link and then Member LaPriest.
Thank you, Chair Eckert. Just a few additional questions. My first question is, would there be any way for MPC to consider a temporary development permit, given some of the questions that have arose? Another rationale for my consideration of a temporary permit would be to allow the 2024 planned groundwater analysis that was referenced in the response to the latest complaint. It would be nice for MPC to have the results of that analysis, especially in conditioning things like potential requests for potential groundwater testing. Also, just with regard to that groundwater testing, it was identified in that latest response from Silvis as well that it would be difficult to test water and determine the exact source. And I know that that is a significant challenge, and we have to be cautious with that just in terms of liability. If this were to create issues with groundwater, there could be significant challenges in proving what the cause of that was. And if this was a contributing factor, it could create challenges for those landowners that are impacted. As well, just with the reference to the conclusion of the groundwater sampling in 2017, one of my concerns would be the cumulative long-term impacts of a project like this, and not just that first 5 years of the project. So that is certainly something that I've heard from residents, in addition to Deputy Reeve Clausen, and a significant concern of those adjacent landowners. I also just want to point to the response under regarding air quality, where it's indicated that odor is not necessarily associated with a human health risk. While I won't argue that, and this is certainly not my area of expertise, we do know as representatives of ratepayers in the county that odor can have significant impacts on quality of life, and that is a key reason that people choose to live and work and do business in Wheatland County. And it is a part of our statutory document framework. It's a guiding principle within our MDP, and identified as one of our key challenges is managing growth in a strategic way, accommodating that growth and development in appropriate areas while minimizing its impact. And there's a number of things, including quality of life, which I know is always one of our considerations. And just recognizing the challenges with governing and enforcing issues around odor, and also recognizing the substantive impact it can have on those adjacent, primarily residents, but it could be adjacent agricultural operations as well. My other question was if there is a way for us to ensure, and I realize this may fall under provincial authority, but the integrity of the liner, just how that would be confirmed over the long term. There was also reference in our engineer's analysis for the, sorry, I'm just going to the right page. Around odor, there was, and I may have missed it, but I didn't see a condition around like mitigating that odor. And there's a little bit of, I'm not exactly sure where we're falling in terms of cover, because part of that analysis indicates that it could create issues, and that the odor will be primarily when the stockpiling is being done. But that is also being done over, I believe it was May to July, which is when we know those ratepayers will be outdoors a lot. Yeah, so it says May 1st to July 31st. That is when odor impacts, from what I've heard from complaints from adjacent landowners, would be most impactful, is during that time frame. And it 6 to 14 times a day for 3 months of our very short outdoor season in Wheatland County could create significant impact. And then there's some contradictions. We reference the Shepherd Biosolids Lagoon, but then in our engineering analysis, it indicates that the planned that the denaturing is occurring at the Bonnybrook wastewater treatment plant. And so I think I would like some clarity on where the denaturing is taking place. as well to protect Rocky View County as well, because we're specifically referencing Shepherd. And so I think we need to be mindful of that just in terms of aligning with the request from Rocky View County within their comments. And then my final question is around leachate. We know that that can create significant odor issues as well. And I recognize it's not contemplated in this application, but just wondering, at times we have heard arguments that that is a necessary part of stockpiling. And is there a way that we can ensure that that would not be a factor in future stockpiling operations? Thank you.
Thank you, Member Link. Member LaPriest?
So I was just wanting to say, just maybe in response to Member Clausen, just about stockpiling in different locations. Like if we wanted to, I don't think we have authority to do that. I think it's EPA. But all across like most agricultural producers spread manure, they need to have it stockpiled in a location before they can spread it. And the confined feeding operations have to deliver it based on, they can't just always deliver it as needed immediately. So I don't think we have authority to do that, but I also don't think it would be wise of us to do it, to try and regulate that, I guess. And also, for me, I'm satisfied that the groundwater would be protected. I think they've done a lot to mitigate that issue and make some great points about the wells being 100 feet down and having a clay layer, and all of the points that were made in the response. So I'm not so worried about that. I am concerned about the odor issue, as we all are. Nobody wants to live around a smell like that, but I don't think that this stockpile will change that. I think it's already happening and it's outside of our control. So for me, I guess I'm not, I'm in support of the application, I guess.
Member Clausen?
Just in response to the last comments here, understand agricultural operations with feedlots and things like that. I totally understand that, where the reference is. It is a different material though. This is a material that is coming out of a city. Yes, it's human waste, but there also could be possible industrial sites there that are treated in a certain way, shape or form. Whether or not it's in that sludge, I don't know. And the sludge is a concentration of what goes into a wastewater plant. It's in the bottom and it's dewatered and it's by nature concentrated. So it's a little bit different product. Yes, it is being used to, as a fertilizer thing. One of the questions I have, there was a reference here for 2028 with the AEPA, and that would be a point in time where maybe some of these things can be addressed by the residents, which is 4 years away, but I don't understand that process. Do we have any idea what that looks like? Does the AEPA come back to the Wheatland County and say, has there been issues? Can we address this? Do they have to reapply? I don't understand how that works, and it would be very helpful, I think, for the residents to understand that, if we can answer it.
I know that the original permit expired in 2000. I don't know if it was the original one, but one expired in 2023. And so then it was just extended to 2028. And I didn't get any notice. I don't think we got notice.
See, there's a gap between the regulatory body and the municipality. I've seen this in other things as well that we've dealt with. The regulatory body should actually contact the municipality, especially if they're renewing something, and say, what issues are there? Because these issues aren't going away. Maybe we can mitigate them, maybe we can't, but at least we can address them. Right now, we're in the situation where we're trying to we're trying to deal with homeowner concerns, and they feel that they're not they're not, there's no avenue. It's like they're stuck with this. And what I've seen in municipal government, there's always checks and balances, and there's chances to review. So I'm really disappointed that the EPA did not reach out and talk to us and ask us, especially with ongoing things. Maybe they did with the operator, I don't know. Maybe they did with the city, I don't know. But that has to be fixed, because we are responsible for the ratepayers in our area that have to deal with this, and they're being walked on. And this isn't fixing it.
Member Larson.
So the same stuff that's being stockpiled here is also being used in several other parts of the county. I could point to piles where farmers are actually paying the city for this stuff. They stockpile it there until they can get it spread on their land. So I don't see an issue with this. So with that, I would move that Municipal Planning Commission approve DP 2023-121 for a stockpile subject to conditions 1 through 9 as found in the report.
Thank you, Member Larson. Got a question, and maybe it's this stockpile. Like, why would, if I own this stockpile, if I'm Silvis, why would I use this stockpile if I can just dump this material on the land where I want it to be spread in the calendar year that it has to be used up in? Like, this whole thing seems to be redundant, because I wouldn't ever use that, because I'm going to get rid of 400,000 or 4,000 tons of material. They're going to dump it in 7 different places in a very short area. Like, I don't see why we can't. This is all being spread in a very tight area. Like, there should be no stuff allowed on the field. I don't know if we can allow this, but you've got a central point where you've got your stockpile. Your trucks bring it in, and then your trucks haul it out, no different than it would be if it was in the field. I just don't understand why there's a difference. A stockpile should be a stockpile. I'll go back to what Member Clausen said. A stockpile is a stockpile. I've personally seen this stuff out in the fields that's on a grade, that's on an angle. If it rained, anything that comes off of this stuff, and I don't know if anything comes off of this stuff, would go straight into the creek that it was above. Where I know it can't do that in the holding deal. We have a really good idea here. We've got this berm stockpile. I don't see why we just can't say, fine, we're going to put it into the berm stockpile, and then when you spread it out into the land, you bring your trucks out and your trucks haul it, and they're hauling it short distances. They're not hauling it 20 miles. They're hauling it within a couple of kilometers. I mean, we go to all the work, we do all the testing, we spend huge money on our engineers to prove that the stockpile, the containment berm works, and yet we're not going to use a containment berm, because if I'm not forced to use that containment berm, I'm not going to use it. It's because it'll be more cost effective to dump it on the land. So I don't know what to do here. I understand that we have ratepayers that are willing to take this material. Personal choice, I would not take this material, because there has been the pharmaceuticals, the heavy metals that are in this, could be in this product. None of that stuff is tested for. I mean, you read, the internet's a horrible thing in the fact that you can Google biosolids and you can read horror stories and not so much horror stories, depending on just where you want to do this. So I just don't understand. I need more clarification on what a stockpile is before I'm going to vote for this, because if we're not forcing them to use their stockpile, this bermed stockpile, then there's no point in all of this stuff that's been done, all this work that's been done, because human nature is going to tell me that if I can put it onto a piece of property and I don't have to use that stockpile, I'm not going to use it. So I don't know where I'm going to sit on this one, but right now I need some clarification on what a stockpile is, and I don't know how I get that clarification. Yes, Councillor LaPriest. Member LaPriest, sorry.
Oh, that's fine. So I was just thinking, in the report, it talks about, sorry, I've lost it. Application areas and volumes fluctuate from year to year, with the proportion of biosolids proposed to be applied on non-leased marginal agricultural land. So they're going to take that stockpile and they're going to try and sell it to other, like probably not the Haderate farm that they're leasing land from, but other places. And so that's why they need the extra space, I believe. But I just also wanted to comment about, so we had the City of Calgary and Silvis come to our Ag Service Board, and they had a chemist came and she told us about the science, about what is in it, and the fact that you can measure things at such a small rate in the parts per billion that you might see heavy metals or pharmaceuticals, but they're nothing that are going to affect people or crops, or from the crops that they're put on, or whatever. I think we did hear from them already, and I think they've indicated that it's safe.
Thank you. Member Bigger.
I still think if they are stockpiling in all areas of the wheatland of the county, they should all be permitted though. And maybe not to this extent, but there should have to be either a temporary permit, or how long that's going to be there. Like I was all for this the way I thought it was. I didn't know they were putting it right into the land or stockpiling it in other places. I'm shocked at AEP. I can understand agriculture practices because it's an agriculture practice. It's if you have cattle, you have manure, you need to get rid of the manure, you spread it. That's a practice. This is taking someone else's waste and bringing it into our county. And I can see maybe there is a benefit to the agriculture for sure, marginal land, but it should be monitored in a way where the odor, the neighbors are warned. They're something more legit than today it's nice out, tomorrow it's going to smell like awful that doesn't seem right for our residents to have to go through that.
Thank you. Member Clausen and then Member Lippers.
Stockpiling is actually in our land use bylaw, and that's why it's here. Like it's the reason it's here is for technically every stockpile in the county should be dealt with this way. We've used it for land haul, big dirt hauls and things like that. We also used it for a site that's unrelated to this one that we had to go to court for, and that was one of our tools that we used to put a stop work permit on it. You have very little other than the initial, which was before my time here, the initial idea of it was a pilot project. They started it and it rolled into, as of 2023, it rolled into and renewed, and we didn't even get notified. That's absurd. I mean, it should have come back to whatever board originally approved this should have had a review of it and had input. So it's a tool that we need to have. I can't support the motion that's in front of us right now unless we change a lot of it, and I don't even know what to change, because I've talked to the people that are out there. I've been at their houses. There's three concerns I consistently hear are, I wrote it down here because I hear it all the time: smell, contamination, and groundwater quality. Groundwater quality, it looks like they're going to look at it, which is good, because 5 years is a blink in time with groundwater movement. Anything that knows anything about aquifer recharge, it's 50 to 100 years before whatever's on the surface gets down below. By then it's too late. You can't do anything about it. We heard this consistently with another site that had the same similar things, and people had the same issues. We could approve this today. The problem doesn't go away. Those residents still have no comfort level with this. It is agricultural, on the outskirts of agricultural. It was a pilot program. So if we're not, as the body, recognizing the concerns of people that live around there, what are we doing? And these are people that aren't just acreage owners. These are people that are farmers. You know, and I've heard in the area that there is contaminated water wells. It's unconfirmed. I don't know. I have no access to that information. Nobody's coming forward. I've looked on the internet. I've talked to people. I was in the industry. This is not regulated in some country, or they don't even allow this in some countries anymore. We should be proactive in this. Because 50, 100 years from now, it's too late. So I can't support the motion that's on the floor. I'm sorry.
Member LaPrice.
So I just still think that we are trying to regulate something that we don't have authorization over. If AEP is regulating, AEPA is regulating this, then they are the people that these people should be going to them to complain about odors and things like that. And perhaps we could do some advocacy that AEPA would consult with us on these projects. Maybe we could do some advocacy that they could do a better job of consulting with residents with these kinds of projects. But this isn't our wheelhouse, I don't think. And I think if water is contaminated, then public health should be doing testing and it should be confirmed. And otherwise, it's hearsay.
Member Link, and then Member Larson.
So first, just hoping to have some responses to some of the questions prior to voting on the motion. And also just in response to Member LaPrice's comments, a number of the developments that we consider for municipal approvals do have provincial approvals concurrently or at the same time. And so there are certainly developments where we share jurisdiction in terms of authorization for different types of development. What we have found with historical experiences, at times, every governing body has finite capacity in terms of enforcing approvals. And we have found with historic enforcement challenges and substantial complaints that Alberta Environment and Protected Areas has specific capacity challenges in terms of enforcing and responding to those quality of life impacts, especially around odor. Our ratepayers were incredibly frustrated with going through the province for those. They certainly have authority over, multiple environmental issues, but it's that quality of life factor that I think we have heard repeatedly from the province. They don't have capacity. Odor is also subjective, and we know within the county we have multiple factors that influence odor throughout our county. We are fundamentally an agricultural county, which the reality of that, it comes with odor. I understand that. What I'm mindful of is when another municipality's sort of day-to-day operations and how they're managing those have the potential to have long-term cumulative impacts in addition to the impacts of industry already happening in the county, including our primary industry, which is agriculture. And that's where my concerns come in, is how do we balance? We want a county that is conducive to development, but not by sacrificing the quality of life of those who live adjacent to it. And that's why it is critical that development occurs where it's most appropriate, and where we are contemplating approvals, we're looking at what are the measures in place. And in my mind, it's always that balancing of, are there measures in place to mitigate the potential impacts to the adjacent landowners? And that's where my primary questions are, is around the odor, and recognizing that there's some challenges with potential cover or mitigating practices. But to say that this is only something that could occur, when they're actively hauling, and for that to be up to 14 times, like 6 days a week for 3 months, I am very mindful of the impact that could have on adjacent landowners and their quality of life, in addition to some of the other questions I had. But my main point is we do share jurisdiction on multiple approvals that we do. And sometimes there's federal, provincial, and municipal considerations and approvals required.
Thank you, Member Link. Member Larson?
This kind of reminds me of the appeal for the abattoir, where they put forward science. The residents said they didn't want it, but they didn't bring any science to the appeal, and then it was dealt with. So I guess my question to Member Clausen is, we've seen the science at the ASB from the proponent. What science has the residents that are complaining provided for their opinion?
Member Clausen.
Thank you. I don't believe that a homeowner, a resident, a ratepayer in Wheatland County has to go and spend money to provide science. They have concerns. It's our job to bring it forward. Referencing another project has nothing to do with this one. I just want to be very clear on that. The residents in this area, it's very, how would I put it, low populated. If this was in an area closer to a bigger urban center, these same concerns would be addressed, just a louder voice. These people, because they live in an area that is, I mean, yourselves live in areas that are further away from something. If this happened across the road from you, you would have concerns, legitimate concerns, and you would ask questions like anybody else is. These people have a place that they've been for 15, 20, 50 years, and their kids want to look after it. So that's where I'm looking at it is, yeah, it is agricultural. If they were going to use the existing stockpile site and haul out of there, I'd have a real hard time opposing that right now. But that's not the case. There's still temporary stockpiles there. People are concerned of it. I sat on someone's porch in the heat of summer, and Silvis was out there. I give him credit, and City of Calgary came out there. But still, these people, it was a hot day. You could smell it. I could see the trucks hauling, and it's different. It's not a feedlot. And feedlots, a lot of them in our area, let people know, hey, I'm going to be hauling there. I'm going to be doing this. If the water truck, or if the road's too dusty, they'll water it down. They look after their neighbors. So unfortunately, well, fortunately, we have a stockpile bylaw, or sorry, we have oversight on stockpiles. This is dealing with stockpiles. We can do something about it, or we can't. But it doesn't stop the problem. They have a site, so there's a double standard. There's one site in the initial pilot program where it's lined and everything and was set up. So obviously there was concern at some time and with the neighbors, so they did that. Now it's going away from that. I'm not a scientist. This could be fought out between scientists, that's fine, but it's not, I'm not who I am. I represent the taxpayer. I'm not a scientist. But I know their concerns have not been answered, and it's not going to go away.
Thank you. Any more discussion?
I would
Yes.
just like to address some of the questions that were raised. So regarding Reeve Link's questions, yes, we can do a time-limited development permit. We can add a condition for that. My understanding of where the biosolids are hauled from, it goes from the Shepherd Lagoon to the Bonnie Brook. It goes to the Bonnie Brook site and then out to Wheatland County and Rocky View County. So it starts in Shepherd, then to Bonnie Brook, then here. And as far as odor and leachate, I don't know if I can answer those questions. Can you just repeat again?
So just recognizing, well, first, I guess clarification, because we don't have the letter of intent or some of the background materials that you've reviewed, did anything reference any consideration of a leachate pond?
No, not a leachate pond.
So then with other stockpiling considerations, at times there was an argument made during litigation that leachate was like a naturally occurring byproduct essentially of stockpiling, and that it was, I think there was an argument that it was implicitly sort of part of that process, and there was some indication that that was a primary cause of some of the most substantive odors at times with stockpiling. Is there a way to mitigate future leachate with this development permit application?
It's my understanding the one that you're thinking of had a permanent stockpile that was, or more than one, that was very large and was there for many, 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 many years. And I don't know I believe the site wasn't lined. For this stockpile location, it does have a poly liner and clay liner. And so I think there wouldn't be the same potential for leachate. I'm not a scientist, but I've not heard any talk of a leachate pond.
Any other discussion?
So I guess just in response to the comments around the relationship with the Shepherd Biosolid Lagoons and the Bonnie Brook wastewater treatment plant, could we be more specific in our conditions, just in integrating that in, just so that there's clarity? Because it did say in the engineering review that they're like shipping directly from the Bonnie Brook wastewater, I believe, right? And so if, I just don't want, like, detail is so critical if there's issues. And so in condition 8, we reference for the importation of biosolids from the Shepherd Biosolids Lagoon. And I recognize that that is where the Alberta Environment authorization is currently for.
I wasn't certain if the Rocky View scenario is exactly the same as the Wheatland County scenario. So for ours, I have read in the materials that it goes from Shepherd to Bonnie Brook to Wheatland. I don't know if that's the same for Rocky View, but they just mentioned Shepherd. So I didn't want to put words in their mouth.
I think a lot of our documentation also just references Shepherd, though. I didn't read the Bonnie Brook until, at least from what we reviewed, till that final response that was just provided today, unless I missed it somewhere else.
Okay.
So they might have only been, they would just be going off of what we circulated. And I think their concern is the transportation through their municipality to access the development in our municipality and the potential impact on their transportation network.
Okay. I would have to just get clarification from the applicant to be sure that I'm interpreting that right, that it goes Shepherd to Bonnie Brook and then to Wheatland. That's what I think. But if you would like me to ask them, they are here.
Perhaps we could even take a break and look at that. And then my other question will be is if administration has any language that we could consider for an additional condition regarding odor and mitigating that. I still don't know where I land on this either. I just want to contemplate the answers that have been provided, but I think that would be one of the core questions is around how do we mitigate that odor? And historically, it has certainly been our responsibility, and no other level of government has taken that on behalf of our ratepayers. So I think it's critical that we know if administration has a way to condition that and what the enforcement potential would be on a condition for that.
I would just like to just say, Stefan just brought to my attention that we could just strike that from the Shepherd Biosolids Lagoon from the condition if we wanted as well. Just that the importation of biosolids to the stockpile locations.
I think that would be great. I think just to give administration some time to draft, I for sure would like to see language around a condition for odor and then administration's advice on the enforceability of that condition.
Yeah, we got to know if there is odor problems, where they go. It sounds like maybe some of the complaints get lost if that phone number goes to Calgary or AEP.
Does that give clarity to administration if we take a break and get those answers?
Sherry is asking if we should take a break from this. I'll let her speak to it.
Through the chair to the committee, I was going to suggest if you'd like to allow us to pause and table this particular DP so we can work on those 3 conditions and allow MPC to continue with the other reports, we can do that. And then come back and bring this back to the committee.
Perfect. Okay, and we'll take a short break and then we'll table this. And then do we have to vote on tabling this? I've got discretion to manage my agenda, maybe. I'll call the Municipal Planning Commission meeting back to order. I am allowed to rejig the deal. So what we'll do is we'll table for the time being the biosolids DP 2023-121, and we'll move on to DP 2023-179. Can you do that for us, Susan?
This application is for variances for 2 existing moved-on accessory buildings. The location plan is on page 34 of the application package. It is located approximately 3.2 kilometers south of Dallam, 0.4 kilometers west of Highway 56, on the south side of Township Road 270. The circulation map is on the same page. We circulated to residents within 1 mile radius. We got 2 responses, one in support and one in opposition. And the responses are found on pages 39 and 40. Would MPC like these read?
They'll be in the package, so no, I don't think they'll be necessary. Thank you.
Okay. For agencies, we circulated to Alberta Transportation, and we did receive a response after the agenda was already uploaded. I got a response, and they said that the proposed development is exempted from the requirement of a permit. The exemption and terms and conditions apply to the development referenced herein at the location shown, and any new or additional development activity must obtain approval from Alberta Transportation. Internally, the manager of operations said no concerns regarding the variance request for the structures. Likelihood for development of the right-of-way is extremely low. Ag and Environment said, just for information, the area is acknowledged for its relative wetland value and holds the status of a preservation site. Given this, there are no concerns on our end. Building and Safety Code said that these buildings will require building and safety code permits, which will include inspections with the permits. Pages 35 through 37, we see the site plan and some aerial photos of the property. This application is to address 2 non-compliant structures, buildings A and B, on the site. The buildings were identified due to a complaint the county received, which stated that they had been moved to the property without permits and were potentially going to be used as dwellings or cabins. The landowner applicant advises that they will be used as accessory buildings only, providing additional interior space for friends and family to congregate. Compostable toilets will be installed. There will be no septic or running water to the buildings. They will not be used as permanent dwellings or temporary dwellings. The 2 buildings require a variance to allow them to remain in the current locations. The setback is 22.86 meters from the right-of-way of a public road, whether it's developed road or not. And these buildings are located 17 meters and 6 meters from that road right-of-way. Range Road 195, which runs east-west just on the edge of the property. It extends from Township Road, Range Road 195 is the south road extending from Township Road 270 for approximately 260 meters and ends at the entrance to the subject property. The only 2 residences using this road are located on these lands. The applicant has applied to have the undeveloped road allowance closed, which would give them the opportunity to purchase the lands and consolidate them into the rest of the parcel. If that application is successful, the 2 accessory buildings would meet the required setback of 3.05 meters from a side property line. That application is currently in the circulation process. Pending the outcome of the road closure application, in order to bring the buildings into compliance, a variance to the setbacks for the 2 buildings has been requested. Alternatively, a permit may be granted with the requirement that the structures be moved into compliance, or the two buildings could be removed from the property. And on pages 37 through and 38, we have some photos of the two buildings. The land use bylaw variance criteria has been outlined in the policy analysis section of this report. The following recommendation considered the circulation responses, the land use bylaw, variance criteria, safety code requirements, and the proposed development permit conditions. Staff is of the opinion that the variance criteria has been met and have provided a recommendation on that basis. And staff's recommendation is on page 30. We are recommending that MPC approve the two variances for the two buildings subject to the conditions as noted, which include condition 4, which stipulates that under no circumstances shall the two buildings be used as a temporary or permanent dwelling unit. And the standard 3 response options are found on page 32. Please let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. MPC's wishes. Yes, Member Larson.
What's the definition of a temporary dwelling?
I would have to look it up in the land use bylaw to know exactly, but typically a temporary dwelling would be something that somebody would live in while they're building their permanent residence. We don't have in our land use bylaw other definitions like we used to for temporary dwellings, but now we just, if you are building a house and you already have a house on your property, maybe we would put a condition that the other house is temporary, the original house. Do you want me to look up the exact definition? Okay.
I am waiting.
I guess I just have maybe a comment. I don't know if I want to make a motion or to me, I think the residents should be removed. They look like a residence. They look like two residences. To say that they are going to be used to, what do they say, for a gathering place seems, I don't know. I have a hard time with it. And then we do say that if they were used as residents, they would be subject to enforcement. But we have an issue with enforcement, I think. So I hate to take a hard line on this, but I guess I'm opposed to the proposed motion as presented. I don't know how everybody else feels.
I don't know if this is relevant. I will just give a little bit of background about the situation on the lands is that this person takes in several foster children, and there are several occupants, and I think that was what their idea for the congregation areas were about. So.
Just further to Member LaPrisa's comments, would it be possible to have by law just weigh in on the enforceability of the condition around being used as a temporary or permanent dwelling? Because I see what Member LaPrisa is saying just in terms of the challenges with enforceability. And I could also foresee that being challenging.
So just to understand, to have bylaw weigh in on the enforceability, so it is land use bylaw that it would be an infraction of because it's a development permit condition. So how do you want enforcement to weigh in?
I guess just the reasonability of being able to enforce that condition, given that we are complaint based, but I guess just outlining if there was a complaint around that and say there was a complaint that it's being used as a permanent residence, what kind of challenges does that create for us as a municipality in terms of enforcing that condition? Just the practical, kind of pragmatic side of the condition. Like, I appreciate that the condition is there, but can we enforce it?
And can I add to that?
Councillor, or Member LaPrice.
And do we want to be in the position of having to enforce that? Like, could you imagine these families move in with their children and we have to kick them out? Like, that would be way worse than denying this today.
So I've got a question. We have got a recommendation in front of us. And this is going to go, we turn this down, this is going to go immediately in front of SDAB. And SDAB is going to tell us to take a hike because our administration, I mean, I understand, like, if, and then maybe the counselor in the area can explain, is there a lot of pushback to this and is there a lot of complaints and all that kind of stuff? It looks to me from the pictures that these people are trying to fix things up. And I mean, I just look at, we can vote against this. I just cannot, in my mind, do we have a good enough excuse to go to SDAB and say, this is the reason why we're not going to do this? And when I go against administration, I'm really, really, really hesitant to do that. And I don't think, I can't in my mind make a decision up, but I'm just looking at what I've got, the pictures here.
And I would just like to clarify too, that if these met the setback, so what you're going to be refusing or approving today is the variance. So I guess if they move these buildings so they meet the setbacks, they can come back to us and apply, and it will be a permitted use. So the buildings could still stay. It's the same as any other farmer or landowner out there could have accessory buildings that they say are accessory buildings, and they're not.
So clarification, they are looking at taking over, buying out the short piece of unapproved Range Road 195, I believe it was. If they got that, then it's a permitted use then, right? Like if they buy that piece of, so are we willing to say, no, this is, and knowing full well that 6 months from now, that this is all going to be moot? Do I know what they're actually going to use with that? If they're going to actually live in that house, I don't know. I'm going to, there are ratepayers. I'm going to take their word for it that they're actually going to use the use for what they're going to use for. So I'm going with staff on this one. So any other discussion? We have to have motion. Yes, Member Link.
I'll withdraw my request about enforceability. The condition is there and the use is clear. If the use in the future is outside of what is being contemplated in the variance, that's a separate issue and would be addressed at that time. My concerns around that are around density but that's for another. If that is the case, then that's a question for another day.
I would agree. Based on what you just said, this is a request for variance. So with that, I am going to move that Municipal Planning Commission approve DP 2023-179 for 2 variance requests for 2 existing accessory buildings, subject to conditions 1 through 5.
Thank you, Member LaPrice. Any other discussion? Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is passed. We will move on to DP 2024-300.
This application is for backyard hens, and the location plan is on page 46. It's within the hamlet of Carsland, immediately northwest of the intersection of Railway Ave and Strangmere Street. Circulation map is on this page as well. We circulated to adjacent landowners +1. We didn't receive any responses. There was no response internally, and the agency circulation wasn't performed. Page 47, we see the site plan and some aerial photos. It's lots of trees on the lot, so you can't really see much in the backyard. This application is to allow 6 backyard hens, which are domesticated female chickens, and a backyard coop on a residential parcel within the hamlet of Carsland. The proposed structures meet the minimum size parameters listed in the bylaw for the interior and exterior enclosed coop areas. A fully enclosed bin will be on site for the storage of manure until it is combined with household compost and used in the flower beds. The subject parcel has a dwelling, a garage, and several mature trees, which will assist in providing shade and privacy. The parcel has no shared property boundaries with other residential lots. Across Railway Ave to the south are several commercial and industrial lots. And on the west side is the hotel. On the east side, there is a separation by Strangmere Street, and on the north, there is an alleyway. A picture of the proposed coop and enclosure is on page 51. And we also have on 52 just photo of the backyard and the proposed manure storage container. The land use bylaw criteria for backyard hens has been outlined in the policy analysis section. Staff's recommendation considered the specific site details, lack of concerns raised from landowners, and the municipal development plan objectives and land use bylaw requirements permit and the proposed development permit conditions. Staff has provided a recommendation based on this analysis. It is on page 42. Staff are recommending that MPC approve the backyard hens and the backyard coop subject to the conditions as noted, which include condition 1, which is the size requirements for the indoor and outdoor space. Condition 5, which is taken directly out of the land use bylaw for the keeping of hens, and condition 6, which lists specific provisions regarding to the coop. A note has been added that the applicant register the premises under the premise identification regulation. Staff's standard 3 options are found on page 44. Please let me know if you have questions.
Thank you, Suzanne. MPC's wishes.
I'll move that Municipal Planning Commission approve DP 2024-300 for backyard hens and backyard coop, subject to the following conditions from 1 to 6.
Thank you, Member Bigger. Discussion? Yes, Member Clausen.
I just want to point something out. And this all came through COVID. We went through this, and I don't fault staff or anything, but for 6 chickens, we have a full page of stuff, and we deal with a province that talks red tape reduction. I give these people credit for going through this process to do this, because it is just, when you look at it, pull the lens back and look at it. Wow. Yeah, I'm in support of the application. It's just amazes me how deep down the rabbit hole we can go sometimes.
We're government.
I know, and 50 years ago, you could have them and nobody cared. What difference does it make?
I'm wondering myself that maybe they're going to be raising amber link chickens. Yep.
There is a break called that. Anyways,
what you
sorry for
learn
that.
on
I had to point it out.
Any other discussion? If there is none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is passed. We will move on to EP 2024-302.
Good morning, MPC. Rachel Hansen-Beaton with Planning and Development Services. Here to present development permit DP 2024-302 for variance request for existing garage and 2 accessory buildings. The property is located 2.41 kilometers north of Carsland, immediately adjacent to Range Road 260 on the east side. The application has been circulated internally and to agencies and to the surrounding properties within a 1 mile radius, as shown on page 58. There were no external responses. After fire reviewed the photos, they had no concerns. WAD had no concerns. Fortis Alberta stated that they had no concerns with the encroachment and that they will send a discharge to land titles as this right-of-way agreement is no longer required. The site plan is located on page 59 and 60. This application has been made to request a variance to the setbacks for the 3 existing non-compliant buildings located on the subject lands. The real property report identified 3 accessory buildings that did not meet the requirements of the land use bylaw as per the described below. The distance between the garage and the manufactured dwelling is 1.20 meters and the required setback is 1.52 meters. The wood shelter is 15 meters from the right-of-way of Range Road 260 and the required setback is 22.86 meters. The shop is located 12.98 meters from the right-of-way of Range Road 260, and the required setback is 22.86 meters. Pages 62 to 64 contain photos of the buildings. In conclusion, staff recommend that Municipal Planning Commission approve the development permit DP 2024-302 for variance request for the existing garage and 2 accessory buildings. Staff is of the opinion that the LUB variance criteria has been met and have provided recommendation on that basis with conditions 1 through 3 found on page 54. MPC has a standard 3 response options found on page 56. And this concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Rachel. MPC's wishes.
I move that Municipal Planning Commission approve DP 2023-302 for 3 variance requests for 3 existing accessory buildings subject to the following conditions from 1 to 3.
Thank you, Member Bigger. Discussion. Seeing none, I will call the vote. All in favor? That is passed. We now just have the DP 2023-121 that has been tabled. I think we'll take a brief break while we find out what's going with that one. So thank you. Has everybody, I guess we're back in session. Has everybody had a chance to look at the changes in the conditions? And I believe the 1, 8, and 9 are the only ones that were changed. Yes, Member Link.
So just reviewing the proposed potential amendments, I support the addition of a time limit to make it a temporary permit to allow for MPC to have the analysis from the additional groundwater analysis that Silva's indicated in their response to the latest letter of concern. And also just to allow administration to monitor and report back on complaints during that time frame. I have concerns about the condition requesting the applicant follow the recommendations of the odor assessment, and maybe not so much concerns, but more questions. So I think there's some lack of alignment between what's in our RFD around on page 17, second last paragraph from the bottom, second sentence. We trust Silvis's assumption that there have been no complaints is accurate, as we assume Silvis would have been contacted. My hope would have been that the engineers that were reviewing would have been provided information from administration regarding concerns that have been conveyed to council and I believe passed along to administration. So I have concerns around that. And I guess just not seeing the full, so I guess a question to administration, can you clarify what the odor assessment is? Because the applicant references that the city contracted a third-party consultant to conduct an odor investigation, and within that, they're indicating that the best sealer for the biosolid stockpile is the natural crust. Whereas in our RFD, there is some reference to the pros and cons of coverings. And the recommendation on page 17 is better cover of pile, especially the fresh biosolids. But then McElhaney's final comment is Silvis response notes that material is transported from May to July. Wheatland County should note that this would indicate the period of potential issues. I just need clarity around the no action is required to Silvis. So just some further clarity around what is in the odor assessment and what that would mean specifically for odor mitigation.
It was my understanding that McElhaney didn't think that there was any further action required by Silvis. So that was what they had, that was their recommendation. So I did not add a condition because that was what McElhaney's response was in the end, was that nothing further was required.
And respecting the opinion of our engineers, but concerned about, specifically about the comment referencing trusting assumptions that there have been no complaints, that doesn't align with, I think, our experience. And so that raises concerns. Is there a way to draft language where they would be required to mitigate odor concerns or something stronger, recognizing that there is some subjectivity and some complexities around odor in agricultural areas?
So under condition 9, it does say that they shall provide documentation to Wheatland County verifying the action taken to remediate a complaint received. Was there anything else that we had come up with that we could add to that?
Yes, Member Clausen.
Just on the complaint thing, whether or not we get notification of the complaint, because honestly, we don't know if there's, when it's been complained to, how long it took to respond, that kind of thing. If there's some kind of way to get that back would be nice. Then I could follow up with ratepayer and say, yes, it's been dealt with this date. You know, we are aware of it. Overall though, when I look at this, it's still just for the one stockpile. And if that's, I like this for this stockpile, that's fine. But I really want to see these other ones that are on the sites that are, and they still have the same materials. They don't have, that's a difference. There's one that's got a liner and all this stuff, the exact same materials going out onto the field without, there was a berm, maybe 2 inches high that I saw. It was on a slope that drained away. There was an active crop being grown, but some of it was mowed down so they could do the stockpile and wait till after. So to me, any stockpile for this project needs a development permit, and that would mitigate all concerns. And if it had all these same things for those, because all this means is that one has these concerns, all these control factors are there. Anything else other than that has nothing other than EEPA, which has regulatory things, but it's the exact same material. That's what I really want to point out. This is only for one site. And stockpile is not defined as any size, shape, from what I heard. So it's in our land use bylaw. And I think if I see another stockpile out there, my first question is going to be, where's the permit for it? And that will be the residents that out there will ask the exact same thing. So how are we going to answer that question. On complaint, if they complain about, we got to make them do it. How do we deal with that? Because that's how we react. Because I know the public can complain, and we'll be back here for each another one. If that's the process, that's fine. I just want the public to be aware of that.
So your question would be, as soon as there's a stockpile, if the neighbors complain about it, what do we do about that?
Exactly. Do we go through the development because we have it in our land use bylaw? There's a stockpile which isn't defined as any size, shape, or whatever. It's exactly, so we're setting a precedent here, right? But it's not complete. There's holes in it. So what's going to happen when they resume practice that they've done in previous years? So we do so tomorrow, well, 6 months from now, they fill up this site. They start doing it on another site in the land area. Public complains about it. Do we put a stop work order on it and get them back in here to get a permit for it? I just want to be aware so the public knows what we're going to do for them, because this isn't going to, the problem's still there.
That opens it up for any stockpile of any material.
Our bylaw
Then
still
what-
does.
I know, but
Yeah.
that, and so now we've put our agricultural
It's been there for a long
industry-
time. It's been
I
there
know,
since
but it puts it
2017.
at risk that anybody can complain. We are meant to have agriculture, like if somebody wants to develop, not saying that these are acreage owners are not that situation. And maybe we're debating something that's not before us here, but farmers have to be able to do their job. We've protected that in our land use bylaws. So I don't know. I'm not sure.
Member Lincoln, member Bigger, then member Bigger.
So appreciating the comments around, I think we need to focus on the application that is before us for MPC, recognizing that some additional concerns have been raised. MPC could potentially, or could contemplate a motion following consideration of this application to direct the chair of MPC to bring to council a request for review of the land use bylaw around the definition of stockpiling. I do support the comments around we need to mitigate any potential sort of nuisance isn't the right word, but creating red tape issues for our agricultural producers in terms of stockpiling that's done in the normal course of their agricultural operations. I think we need to address that within the land use bylaw, but that's outside of MPC's purview, so we need to take that to council. I would also appreciate a motion for the MPC chair to bring to council a request perhaps to add the engagement with municipalities around AEPA approvals, authorizations, or extensions, so that there is some kind of engagement with the local land use planning authority on those applications. And we do have a meeting with Minister McIver, or council has a meeting with Minister McIver at the spring RMA, and we could request to add that to the agenda to discuss with him there. But both those matters are outside of the purview of MPC. Not that they don't need to be addressed, but that we can't address those today. We need to focus on the specific application. I do appreciate the language created around the time limit, and that could be a way to take some time to see if the current conditions address the matters of concern that have been raised by adjacent landowners and would not put them in a permanent situation of dealing with this. When I'm looking at these applications, I'm constantly weighing the benefits of the development, which there are benefits, against the impacts on adjacent landowners and our responsibilities to mitigate those. And I try and think long-term, what is the council sitting in these chairs, or the MPC, likely council, in 20 years going to be dealing with because of decisions that we make today? And I don't want us, we have to take that long-term cumulative impact viewpoint on this. And we all have experiences that lead us to understand that we need to think not necessarily best case scenario with what we're approving, but worst case scenario with what we're approving. And perhaps, even ownership can change, that type of thing. And that can exacerbate issues that our ratepayers are dealing with in terms of quality of life. I am prepared to support not the motion that is currently on the table, but if there were an amendment to include the clauses that have been presented by administration, then I am prepared to support an approval for a time-limited development permit. There are benefits to the development permit as well, which our administration did an excellent job of outlining in terms of being able to manage some of the road use impacts and that type of thing. So thank you.
Member Bigger.
I had the same thoughts, but I was just thinking of committee as a whole instead of council.
So I have to ask the councillor of the area the question, is there a problem with odor complaints where where this stockpile is, or do our complaints come from the stockpiles that are out in the field?
I think originally there was a huge concern over the initial area where it was this all-weather stockpile. I believe from what I've heard, most of that has died down. People are somewhat acceptant of it. It doesn't smell, mostly. What I've heard now and most recently was definitely ones that are temporary stockpiles that I witnessed firsthand, actively hauling to the site, that have a different level of containment than what we're approving today.
Okay, so my problem with this, and I don't see the temporary stockpile is in my mind the problem. I have we have a central area for this stockpile. It's not like in this stockpile, and we could haul out of this central area. And if we haul out of this central area, I have no problem with this. I agree 100%. But if we don't figure out a way to eliminate temporary stockpiles, I think cannot we just put a deal in here that all hauling for land will be done out of this central stockpile. All the material comes into one thing. This is not a farm operation here. This is coming from the city of Calgary. They're trying to get rid of a problem. We're helping them get rid of a problem. And I'm just trying to figure out a way to get rid of that problem with the least amount of problems. And if they haul out of this centralized area, because they're not hauling across the county, everything they're selling, if they're selling or moving it around, if it isn't going to the Willows, it's going to other pieces of property. And that could be out of that area. I don't see a problem with this. I can go with this if we get rid of temporary, that this stockpile covers all the stockpiles from it. And if it doesn't, then I'm going to be voting against it. So, Member Link.
I just think we have to be cautious, recognizing that this is distinct from solely agricultural operations where an agricultural producer is buying commercially available fertilizers. I think what I want to be very cautious of is infringing on our agricultural producers' right to farm and to have streamlined operations, which at times does include temporary stockpiling as part of normal, at least this is my understanding, of normal agricultural operations. And that's where, and that does intersect somewhat uniquely because of this specific product and some of the concerns that have been raised with it. But I'm just cautious of that infringement on our agricultural producers' rights. And maybe that's a matter of, ownership of the product. If it's the developer or applicant stockpiling, perhaps we can distinguish between that and an agricultural producer stockpiling after receiving fertilizer. And I think we need to delineate that carefully so that we are not impacting our agricultural producers. Because the last thing I want to see in this county, I get complaints at times from CFOs or from other agricultural operations when they are doing spreading activities or fertilizing. And that is just a reality. And people need to understand that that's just a part of living in a fundamentally agricultural community. And I do not want to compromise that or mismanage expectations around that, recognizing that there could be additional concerns given the source of this particular fertilizer. And as Member Clausen indicated, not having the liners in those places. And but so I guess a question to administration, because we have discussed this by but this application is only for the primary stockpile. Are we limiting MPC or Wheatland County Council's authority to regulate other stockpiling by the same developer by approving this without addressing those? Is there implicit recognition that those are, that does not require a permit?
I don't think that is the case. I think this is just dealing with the one all-weather stockpile. And if more conversations need to be had around the other stockpiling, I think that's separate.
And I think the conditions are clear around that this DP is issued solely for the purpose of a biosolids all-weather stockpile. So the conditions are indicative that we are only contemplating approval for that. We have heard administration with some advice around other stockpiles, but we do have, as long as we're not implicitly communicating that those do not require any type of development permit, that still leaves it open for further consideration, either through clarification through the land use bylaw and its application, or through future applications, that those could be addressed at that time. But I think we need more work on how we delineate that so that we're not having unintended consequences of a decision.
Member Clausen.
Thank you. Great discussion and debate. This is the root of the problem. There's some standards that need to be uniformly kept. We need to have further discussions and maybe in a council, which is fine. So if we did a permanent development permit for 1 year, and this has to be on the motion maker to approve that with the additions, then I could support it. And then we'd have time to review this with council on stockpiles and define, maybe tighten that up a little bit so it can be an effective tool to mitigate concerns. That'd probably be, yeah, that would gain my support. Because I understand, like, this is for the one, these are conditions that are deal with that, but there's still, we've identified outlying issues. We need to look at the bylaw and figure out how to make it work more effectively. And then if we had a year's time to come back and review it, I think we might be able to firm this up. And I do want also, I think, and I'll add this after, is follow up with AEP for the reason, you know, with those other motions to direct, I think will be effective for the area. So.
Thank you. Now we have a motion in front of us, but it doesn't have the amended conditions. Will Member Larson change it to include the amended additions and for the length of 1 year?
I was going to say 5 years, but as a compromise, I could go for 3 years because I don't think a year gives us time on something that I don't think is necessarily as big an issue as some people think. I'm okay with 8 striking out the shepherd. I don't necessarily agree with 9B, but it's not a hill I'll die on. So if we can do that, I'd be fine with that.
And you're talking 3 years?
Correct.
Yes, Member Clausen.
Keeping in mind, there's a election cycle in between there too. So to order to carry some information forward, you'd be putting, we could all not be here, we could all be here, who knows, right? So I'd rather get it. I could be satisfied with 2, but prior to the next election cycle, because then it's gonna it'll just fall by the wayside.
That was kind of why I wanted 3, so it does get to another election cycle.
Well,
So
okay.
even 2 years does go past.
Yeah, 2 years would anyway.
Okay.
So we have a motion in front of us. That includes the change to number 1, that permit will be valid for a period of 3 years following the date of issuance. Condition 8, from Shepherd Biosolid Lagoon has been struck, and number 9, B has been added. The application shall follow the recommendations of odor assessment. Does everybody on the commission understand the question? Yes, Member Link.
I'm sorry, I do understand. Just a question to administration: if you have a recommendation on a length of a time limit, I know we do at times do temporary development permits. Do you have a standard that you typically recommend? Or what's most common?
Most common is 1 year.
The reason for my question is I'm just thinking of potential impacts during the interim, during the time limited development permit. Personally, I would be more comfortable with 1 or 2 years. There's multiple factors that can influence odor with something like this, and
Look, given your comment around just that, I mean, if we only leave it for 1 year and we have a really dry year, and we might not get the kinds of complaints that might otherwise happen. Like, maybe it is better to go a little longer. I don't know.
Any more discussion? Everybody understand what's being in the motion? Okay, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? That is lost. I believe that it has to be 3-3 and the vote is lost. I guess that
I would put a motion on the floor that we approve the application as presented with the amendments, but with 2 years rather than 3 years, just based on the discussion. To Member LaPrisa's point around, we are anticipating potentially unprecedented drought, which could expedite crusting, and that could be a 10-year cycle that we're in, and we still might not get the full sense. But I like the balance of having 2 years, and it's still long enough for any groundwater analysis to be completed and included in the next application. It allows the county to do some strong reporting on the complaints that we're receiving and the impact to adjacent landowners with those, and any mitigating strategies that are implemented by the applicant, and then gives us time. And I'm still cognizant of the impact over that interim time period as well. But again, looking to compromise, as was indicated, to balance those competing principles. So I'll make that motion as presented, but with 3 years amended to 2 years following the date of issuance.
I believe that 1 year would be, because it will force us then, if it's 1 year, that we have to come up with a policy about temporary stockpiles of materials that are not generated in the county. I think everybody sort of forgets about this. This isn't a farm thing. This is something generated outside the county, brought in. I'm not comfortable with 2 years. I'm comfortable with 1 year, because it then forces us to bring this to answer the question of what a temporary stockpile is that is not generated from the county. So I will be voting against 2 years, but I would go with 1. I know it doesn't help. So having said that, I will call the vote. Everything's the same except for it's a period of 2 years. All in favor? That is 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? 1, 2. That is carried. And that, yeah, oh yes, no, we got.
I would move to direct the chair of MPC to communicate to Wheatland County Council a request to add a discussion with the Minister of Municipal Affairs around provincial engagement on provincial authorizations, approvals, or extensions of developments within municipalities. We'll start with that one first.
Okay, that motion is, everybody understand that motion, that when we meet with Minister McIver that we talk about
Engagement with municipalities.
engagement with. So I will call that. Any discussion? No discussion. I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is passed.
Additionally, I would move that the MPC chair request an addition to Wheatland County Council Committee of the Whole regarding land use bylaw definition of stockpiling.
Is that motion clear to everybody? Any discussion? I'll call the vote. All in favor? That is passed. Member Clausen, do we have anything else? We're good.
That was covered. Thank you.
Good. I think that's it. Thank you, everybody. With that, we are adjourned.